Hi, this is Guy, the Vecino's coffee guy, and today we are going to talk about how did I get started in the coffee business. Yeah, I think it was back in 1992. I came to a very small church of about 45 people, and I had a family, and I moved them from Illinois to Indiana, and so I was in Muncie, and I needed to find a way to have more income to support my family. And I'm the kind of person where I was raised and brought to faith in Christ during the Jesus movement. And it was kind of anti-establishment, so we were kind of turned off toward the gimmicks that a lot of churches use to raise money and extract money from people that were kind of unwilling, but you had to get the money out of them. And so I was kind of turned off to that, and I wanted to enjoy a way to make money, and I wanted to support my family. And I did not want to beg for money, for people to give more money, and people have enough issues to deal with, and they need uplifted rather than feeling victimized from church. And a lot of people go to church and they're worse off when they leave than when they came, so I didn't want to be that guy. So what I did is I had a hobby. My mother was in the culinary arts, and so she told me about cappuccino and latte. And this is back in, oh my goodness, in the 70s. And so this is before the first Starbucks even came to the state of Illinois, before even Chicago had one. So this is how far back it was going. I was into coffee, and she told me about cappuccino and espresso from the culinary aspect rather than the cultural aspect, where Starbucks has changed our whole cultural setting. And you say Starbucks, everybody knows it's a place you go to meet. And nobody knew what an espresso shot was, or a latte, cafe latte, or a cafe mocha. And now they've developed a whole language that all of America gets. So they've profited people like me that's in the private. I'm more the high-end, third wave, some people call it. Now it's more progressive coffee. It's understanding the science of coffee more than just pouring art and pour-overs. And we could talk about trends in coffee, but I've seen a lot of trends as I've started in this business. But I needed a business that supported me, and so what I did is my friend was opening an ice cream store in Normal, Illinois. And I think it was called County Fair. It was in the mall. And I said, oh, Bob, I said, this is like the best option for a coffee shop. You got coffee and you had donuts and ice cream. I said, you need a coffee bar. I said, oh, we're so over budget. And we had sold our house and had equity from our home, and we moved and we were living in what's called a parsonage in the group I was with. You call it a manse if you're Presbyterian, you call it something else if you're Catholic, but I had the money from my house. I said, what if I bought a two-group machine and a grinder, put it in your shop, and a air pot brewer, and I supplied the coffee, and you supplied the cup and the milk and the labor, and we would do a profit sharing. Every $3 latte, back then it was $3, I guess, something like that. Every $3 latte that's made on my machine that I will maintain, I'll take $1.50, you take $1.50. And that seemed good to him. So I bought my first two-group espresso machine and my first grinder, and had an air pot brewer and an air pot, and we were doing coffee, and I got 50% without working or being there. I got 50% of the coffee income at this mall, and I had it paid off in 6 months, and I thought, wow, this is good. I gotta do that here in Muncie. So I went to a cookie store. And in the cookie store, she got so busy making lattes, she said, we can't get our cookies done. And she said, you've got to get this out of here. And I said, well, wait a minute. We had an agreement. I get 50%. I've got thousands of dollars invested in this equipment. Now I can't recoup that. And she said, I don't care. Get it out or I'm calling the police. And that was Blondie's Cookies. I won't say what I'm thinking. I won't say it, okay? But that machine that was in there, I suddenly didn't know what to do with. I had to pay for it. And what happened is I didn't know what to do, get it out, or I'm calling the police kind of attitude. Well, I took it to the church. And I set it up on the counter, and on Sunday mornings I would make lattes. And people didn't know what they were, but we were making lattes and people were enjoying it. And from that led to, hey pastor, let's start a coffee shop. We need a music venue for, I'm a musician and there's no place for Christian musicians to play. Can we do a music venue? And I said, sure. So we started a coffee house within the church on Friday or Saturday night. And we'd have bands come and play, and we would do I would do a coffee moment, and we talked about different aspects of coffee, and we had poetry readings and artists, and so we were using coffee in church, and suddenly our church exploded in growth. We went from 45 people to 90 people, and half the church left because they didn't like that I wouldn't wear a suit, and they didn't like the band, so they left. And then suddenly they got out of the way, and there's always I call it a blessed subtraction before God adds. And so then the church just exploded, and we grew to 1,200 people, and so, but we were a unique church, and we were called the Coffee Church. So that lady that brought about a bad thing in my life and my finances turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And I think that's what God does, is he kind of surprises you with his goodness. And what you think is bad, he turns around for good. And so that's what begins to happen. So we had a church full of people with spiked hair, piercings, tattoos. And I'm thinking, wow, this church looks different than any church I've ever pastored. But I was really smiling on the outside. We were broke because they didn't contribute, and we weren't pushing for money. So we had double the size with half of the income or less, because we were more than 50% college students. It then turned to a college student church in Ball State University and Taylor and Anderson. And we ended up just launching churches to Anderson, and we launched churches in Exit 59 by Taylor and Indiana Wesleyan. And so we just started growing, and coffee was a part of our culture, and we were called the Coffee Church. Well, that thing grew out of profit sharing, where I needed income. I put a machine in a deli, I put it in an ice cream store, I put it in a yogurt shop, I put it in a bakery, and before long I had, not all at once, but I had 12 places that I had done profit sharing. Well, the challenge of that is that when the machine breaks down, I still own it, and I have to go in and fix it. Well, as I had to go in and fix the machines, I learned how they worked. I made phone calls, it's doing this, what do I do? But there were no espresso machine companies like there are today. And so I had to learn and got talked through how to fix, and now this is how I learned to repair machines. So I learned an art on pulling shots, steaming milk, making drinks. When I first started, we were pouring the layered drinks, and that's a whole different art in itself, and that was an 80s thing, 90s thing. Well, now you're pouring art, and you watch the trends come and go. But I've had the privilege of being able to watch this all happen and grow as I was growing. So my first adventure into coffee was through profit sharing. Well, since there were no espresso machine dealers around, I then was asked, can you get me a machine? And I became a distributor of espresso machines. And so this one lady that kicked me out of her profit sharing, and I was angry, turned into be such a big blessing to me, because it defined my business of selling machines. And then we started roasting coffee for all the people we were helping set up coffee shops. We started a roastery. And then I wanted a system where we could train people in business and ministry. And when we trained people in business and ministry, they would do classes on theology, church history. They would do classes on hermeneutics and homiletics, and then they would roast coffee in the afternoon. Well, we gave them free tuition. We gave them a free place to live, and we paid them money from the coffee business. So when they left, they didn't have a huge debt to pay. Can you imagine wanting to be a missionary or a pastor and you owe multiple $20, $30, $50, $100,000 if you go to seminary, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and suddenly you're leaving, and now you can go into a coffee shop, start a roastery coffee shop, and support yourself and connect with people in a more natural way. And so we were a movement of business and ministry and coffee house church plants. And so that was something that started with getting kicked out of Blondie's Cookies. And so now I'm happy, even though I was angry at the time, God has turned that around and made it a tremendous blessing. Here I am today talking to you about church and coffee, talking to you about coffee concepts, profit sharing. What are the downfalls? What do you got to look for? How do you set things up so that it can happen and serve you, and that you're not in a corner because you haven't thought it through? So here we are today. I am who I am because I was kicked out of a cookie store and doing profit sharing. It's led me to where I am today. Still doing ministry, now at the Harley Davidson stores because I ride. And I'm into using your passion because it's natural. Coffee, Harleys, it's who I am. Taking who you are and living it out in a way that can be pleasing to me and pleasing to other people, and I think God is happy with it too. So here we are. Now, the Vecino's Coffee Guy is stemmed out of years and years of coffee and business and ministry. So welcome to Coffee Concepts. We'll talk about another one next week. And we are going to be talking as well about food trucks or coffee in mobile units where it's like a food truck. I'm dealing with someone now that wants me to help them with a coffee trailer, and I'm giving them some other ideas. So follow us and like us and subscribe to the Vecino's Coffee Guy, and follow us and see what you can pick up, and see if you can write to me and help me with some of your issues that you're dealing with that I can maybe think through with you. We're here for you and happy to be here and happy to have gone through everything I've gone through to help you become who you want to be with coffee. Thank you until next time.